Greetings and happy Monday to you guys, all the Astrolabians out there. Welcome to the Astrolabe, brought to you by King Pilled. How was your weekend? Mine was, well, there's a bug that is traveling around. I've heard from people in Utah, people in Iowa, people in South Dakota, people all over Texas. Apparently there's a bug going around, and it is... apparently, it seems like it might be the seasonal bug. My son has had it for a couple of weeks now, and it involves periodic, sudden episodes of vomiting, as well as other gastrointestinal issues. And I've been laid out most of the weekend. I spent, I won't get too graphic. Let's say this morning took longer than it should have. In part because, man, as soon as I finished the show on Friday, I went out to grab my post-show wind down smoke, and I was scrolling through Twitter, and man, it took me like 10 minutes, and I already had enough things bookmarked to fill another couple of shows. So I actually spent almost 2 hours this morning just going through tabs. I went through and opened all the different bookmarked tweets that I had, and then I was just going through, sorting them, filtering out which ones were worthwhile, which ones weren't. And so I've got tomorrow's show almost done already, almost ready to go. We'll see what happens between now and then. But there obviously was a big news event yesterday, and I am going to hold off on commenting on it too much because the story is still developing, it seems. That's part of... I have a couple of windows worth of tabs for that subject in particular, and I decided to hold off on it today, in part because I'm not prepared to do a 4-hour show yet. I've got too much to do today to do a 4-hour show, and that's what it would have been. But I'm going to wait and see throughout the day today, give it a little more time for anything else to develop. As it is, it seems the last one was sort of... You had to dig a little bit to figure out exactly what the connections and motivations behind the scenes were. This one seems much more out in the open, but because of the involvement, the very apparent involvement of various different intelligence services and such, it's pretty clear that there's a story that's being intentionally seeded, and I want to have a clearer idea as to what exactly that story is before I really weigh in on it. So, for those of you who showed up wanting information on the events of yesterday, I have it, but I'm holding off for now to try to filter through some of the noise. I don't want to be responsible for broadcasting noise. I'd prefer to keep it as much signal as possible. As you're wandering on in here, we got 62 watching right now and 11 likes. Please hit that like button. Help us with the currency of YouTube, and then you can help us with some actual currency as well if you'd like. If you enjoy the show, if you appreciate the time that I spend putting this whole thing together to do this every day, then you can send a super chat. You can become a channel member, YouTube channel member for $5 a month. You can become one of the King Pilled. You can also go to the King Pilled Discord, kingpilled.com, and sign up and join there. We had a absolutely mind-bending schizo stream on Friday. I would say it's probably the first true schizo stream that we've had. We thought we had schizo streams before, but this one was next level. The whole monument mythos thing had our brains melting, and we were exhausted by the time it was done. But yeah, so join the King Pill Discord. That's the best way you can support the show, and you get the most for your money for doing that. And lastly, I've got a link in the chat for me personally. buymeacoffee.com/kingpilled. You can send a little bit of no strings attached money that way, and it's very much appreciated. Thanks to all of you, every last one of you who dumped some change in that on Friday, contributing to Eastwood's birthday fund. You guys were very generous, and my wife and I are very, very appreciative. Speaking of Eastwood's birthday, I'm going to give you guys a warning now. We're going to be up in the Seattle area for about 6 days, the end of September, beginning of October. And I think we're flying out on a Saturday and flying back on a Thursday, I believe. So that week will likely be no Astrolabe. Well, there'll be one on Friday, but Monday through Thursday, most likely there will be no Astrolabe. I may be able to jump on and do a stream on on X. Maybe do a little Q&A or something like that. But be prepared. You'll have to come up with some sort of thing to fill the gap for Monday through Thursday, the beginning of October, because Eastwood hasn't seen his family since I think he was 7 months old, and I haven't seen him in almost 2 years now. So looking very much forward to flying up there and spending time with family and hopefully surviving the flight up there. Douglas Charles says, any Seattle meetups planned? You know, the thought had crossed my mind over the weekend when I was talking to my wife. We'll have a pretty full schedule up there because we've got a lot of people to see. But if any of my people who are in Washington or Oregon or I don't know how far you would want to travel, but if there's enough of you guys who would be interested in doing an in-person meetup in the greater Seattle area, then I'm happy to connect with you guys. Let me know. You can either throw it in the chat here in the comments or tweet at me at RealKingPilled. And yeah, we'll see if we can plan something. It'd be fun to meet some of you guys. All right, let's dive into this. So Alan Dershowitz went and he done posted his phone number on the internet. I don't know why. I don't know what would compel someone to post their phone number on the internet, but he done went and did it, 9/13/24, and so people are taking advantage of it. Apparently, he answers FaceTime calls.
Hello.
Hey, Mr. Dershowitz, were you one of the dancing Israelis at 9/11?
Got him! Okay, another one. My Halo playing brethren out there will appreciate the significance of this clip. One Amish guy, shout out to Mystery Gove, one Amish guy casting the winning vote for Trump in Pennsylvania. This is a suspenseful clip. The best, just brilliant caption. If you aren't bringing this sort of energy into November, are you even an American? You know this is how they are going to be. Are you going to match it with equal intensity? Sir, finishing this election. Halo is basically the only game I have left that I play with any sort of consistency. So that actually might be another draw for you guys if you want to join the King Pill Discord. I've dropped in there a couple of times while I'm playing. I'm not any good, but I have a lot of fun. I love matchmaking. It takes me back to college. So yeah, that's another. If you want to, maybe I should turn into a video game streamer. I could broadcast to the world how terrible I am. I start raging on the internet. When I was in college, I was notorious. Everyone knew when Matt was playing video games. It was almost always some first-person shooter, and I would screech, hollering, yelling around the dorm. I was one of them. I miss those days. I miss the LAN party days. I wonder if they'll come back. Maybe we can bring them back. Okay, another little before we get into the serious stuff, because I've got some real serious stuff on the Haiti situation, the Haitian problem, one might say. Then I've got some stuff on the election, the debate, some more responses, reactions from that, some fact checking, and then I've got some counter elite people. I could kind of broaden the definition of the counter elites, but I've got some good clips from them. I got an ad from the RFK campaign. I got a Peter Thiel clip. I got a Megyn Kelly clip, and then some stuff on Starlink. So before we get to that, though, this is proof. We now have proof from 20 years ago that our man has been defending, protecting the ducks and geese in our parks. This is for those watching afterwards, you're probably not going to be able to see this clip unless you watch it on on X, because I'm pretty sure something coming from SNL is going to immediately get the video blocked until I clip out this part. But those of you who watch live, this is the benefit of watching live. You get to see the full clip. Derek Jeter's taco hole. I don't know if I needed to hear that phrase today. The sketch is missing from SNL DVDs and streams, apparently. This clip being resurfaced here, I think, has provided us, those of you who aren't boomer tech guys like I am, those of you who can actually put together some great videos, great memes. I don't know, man. There's some real good potential with this one. I'm going to put out the bat signal. Some of you make something, send it to me. I'll amplify it. Okay, so I thought this was kind of an interesting clip. I'll just play it. It speaks for itself.
My father immigrated from Haiti to the United States in the late 60s as a teenager, and I want to talk about these recent comments about the Haitians in Springfield, Ohio. First, I want to say my father and I are now estranged, but I did know him in my very, very young years, and when he immigrated, he was one person, and they weren't sending, thousands of Haitians in one area. He wasn't eating people's pets, and he didn't practice voodoo. But he did say that most of the island, the majority of the island, does practice voodoo. The reason they eat cats is for two reasons. Number one is survival. This is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. You can't just go to a food bank like you can here, or just go to McDonald's and get some free or cheap food. Unless, of course, there's a Christian missionary there. People in the United States have a really hard time imagining that type of thing, but it is true. Second, they do animal sacrifices for their religion, voodoo. They make these animal sacrifices to these gods for different reasons. You can do your own research on this. Do I think voodoo is a demonic religion? Yes, I do. That doesn't mean that you hate these people. These people need prayer. But you can't just take over all these people from another country and expect it to work. Not to mention, it doesn't fix the problems of that country. And there's more people left in Haiti that we can bring over. It's not racist to acknowledge that this is a problem. It's not racist to talk about these things that are happening. This is not just white Americans saying this is black Americans. You can look at the people in Springfield, Ohio saying that this is happening. Y'all just want to joke about Trump and say that he's crazy for saying that this is happening instead of actually checking at all to see if this is happening. You want to make jokes about these things. Well, what if it were happening to you and your community? And no, it's beyond eating their pets, even though that is bad enough.
Yeah, who would have guessed? Who would have guessed that a nation comprised of such people, founded on such a founding myth, would actually be a bunch of uncivilized, demon-worshipping cat eaters? This isn't like an accident. It's not an accident that these people are being imported. It's not an accident that they're being brought in intentionally precisely because of who they are. Human bioweapons. That's what they are. They're being used that way. They're being wielded that way intentionally. And it's not an accident. If you want a good breakdown on this, go listen to Pete Quinones. Last week, I believe, he did, or maybe the week before, all the time blends together. He did a breakdown on the history of Haiti. Just a quick run through. It's a good thing to know, because this is an existential issue. Right, Faithful Faustian says their founding was on the massacring of whites. Correct. That was their founding myth. The massacring of white people, specifically because they were white people, and then a conscious, intentional effort to make a deal with a demon and to grant the demon dominion over their island. There is a reason this island is the way it is. And it's not Americans' fault. No American wants them here or wanted their island made the way that it is. This isn't Americans' fault. Pete had a great rant about this in his live stream yesterday, that anybody who's saying, oh, well, Americans voted for this. Yeah, fuck you. Americans did not vote for this. We are not responsible for the condition of Haiti. We are responsible for the condition of our nation, and it's our responsibility to protect our nation and to build it up. To the extent that our civilization is being undermined and unraveled by the types of people who would import Haitians here, To whatever extent that's the case, we're responsible for defending our country, for defending our communities. But you can't blame Americans for this. So I Am 1776, great publication, sent Benjamin Roberts out to Springfield. This is just one of many, many threads that I've seen. I could go on and on and on this, but I also don't want to just completely obsess on the negative stuff all the time, but we need to have some awareness of it, and we need to keep this in the conversation. Because regardless of what the actual details are of the events of yesterday, I can't help but notice that it's very convenient timing. Everyone's talking about eating cats. Well, now people are talking about eating cats less. So we're going to talk about the fucking cats some more. Or in this case, we're going to talk about the cars. Springfield. I'm on the ground investigating for I Am 1776. Burned out and wrecked cars are cluttering local towing companies' lots. According to the company owners, half of their lots are filled with cars wrecked by Haitians. Although the Haitians are insured through acceptance insurance, keep an eye on this name. Some of you are beloved autists out there. You want something to dig into? Go dig into acceptance insurance. Although they're insured through acceptance insurance, quite a name, they do not have licenses, so insurers refuse to pay out. Due to regulations preventing immediate scrap and sale, these shells can fill salvage lots for up to 2 months. So small business owners operating these wrecking companies, good old blue-collar Americans, are being inundated with a bunch of shells that they just have to hang on to because of regulations. Furthermore, both owners reported that Haitians overwhelmingly drove Honda Odysseys when they began to arrive in MAHA a year ago. Trust Auto, there's another name for you, Trust Auto. Isn't this interesting? We have acceptance insurance, and Trust Auto was the point of origin for many Haitian-owned and operated vehicles. The cars are worth only a few $100s at best, which means these small businesses are being forced to eat over $5,000 a month in losses. They frequently deal with PNC Bank during this process, as almost all Haitians bank through PNC. Wow, we're seeing a network building out here. Who at acceptance is insuring Haitians, knowing they're unlicensed and therefore can refuse to pay out? Why is Trust Auto the point of sale for so many Haitians' vehicles? How are they getting loans or documentation to purchase these cars without licensing? Haitians are almost exclusively members of PNC Bank. Who's facilitating this? Who's filing the paperwork and opening these accounts for a community which can't speak English? I'm currently pursuing this and we'll get more answers. Stay tuned. There are more leads and layers emerging by the hour. Please consider supporting our investigative work in Springfield. Shout out to the I Am 1776 guys. Do go support them. And if you got some time on your hands and you want to dig into some of this stuff, here's some rabbit holes for you to go down. No, this is interesting. The CEO of PNC Bank is Bill Dimchak. He's a vile person. Before PNC, this is reading from Wikipedia, before PNC, Dimchak held a variety of key executive positions at JP Morgan Chase. Interesting. This includes global head of structured finance and credit portfolio involved in strategic agenda before the JP Morgan Chase Manhattan merger. Member of the board of directors. He says JP Morgan Chase wasn't a terribly enjoyable place to work. Interesting. If you've been listening to Stormy Waters conversations lately, this little paragraph should stand out to you. For some reason, he's no longer at JP Morgan Chase, and he didn't like it. I wonder if he was thrown out. This is me just entirely speculating. He was also a member of Hilliard Lyons Research Advisors. Dimchak is often credited with being the first major adopter of the credit default swap and conceiving the idea of bundling them together and selling them to investors, which is accredited with being one of the main factors in the financial crisis of 2007-2008. Within the industry, Dimchak has earned the nickname Prince of Darkness. In 2002, Dimchak first joined PNC as chief financial officer. At that time, he worked alongside the CEO, Jim Rohr. 3 years later, he was promoted to head of the company's corporate and institutional banking, in charge of PNC's middle market and large corporate businesses, capital markets, real estate finance, equity management, and leasing. In 2009, he became senior vice chairman and shortly thereafter head of PNC businesses. This guy stinks to high heaven. Yeah, Jamie Dimon threw him out. That's how it would read to me right now. Again, autists, get digging. Let's see what more we can find out about PNC Bank and the connection with, what were the other ones? Trust Auto, and Acceptance Insurance. You've got three pins to put up on the wall to start making connections to. Here's another good thread digging into this from Oilfield Rando. Jumping off of this, someone said Haitians are almost, or he said that, and Oilfield Rando says there's a program called the Individual Development Accounts Program, the IDA. The administration for children and families gives massive block grants to 501c3s. The 501c3 opens an account for refugees and makes dollar-for-dollar matching contributions to these accounts. I mean, this is effectively the way that they're being weaponized. You could see this whole program as a means of private military funding for enemies of the American people. You're eligible for the IDA program if you receive TANF welfare benefits. Haitians are eligible for these as soon as they enter the country. So here's how Social Security describes it. An IDA is a special bank account that helps you save for your education, the purchase of a first home, or to start a business. You use earnings from your work to set up an approved bank account for an IDA. How does it help my money grow? You contribute money from your earnings from work. With an IDA, your contributions are matched with money from your state's Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program or from special funds called Demonstration Project money. The matching money may help you reach your goal sooner. So Haitians are brought in legally through this special executive carve-out and then immediately are eligible to get money from the state's Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program. Money that should be going to Americans. Actual Americans. Who is eligible? If you're working receiving TANF payments, you may be eligible for a TANF IDA. Not every state currently offers one. If you're working and either receiving TANF or have low income and assets, you may be eligible for a Demonstration Project IDA. In Ohio, the ACF awarded $700,000 to the Ohio CDC Association for the Individual Development Accounts program in 2023. One of the purposes of the Individual Development Accounts program is to help the refugees purchase a vehicle. So that probably explains all the bank accounts and cars procured by these seemingly penniless Haitians. So they've created a bunch of bureaucracy layers that they can funnel this money into these people so they can fund their imported bioweapons, imported human bioweapons being released upon the American people. This is not just run-of-the-mill corruption. This is why I can't Fed post here, but you could probably fill in the blanks. This is the magnitude of the problem that needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed ruthlessly. I'm heartened that there seems to be a tremendous amount of popular will building behind this, and that's what it'll require. The only way that the people who can do something about this, who are inclined to do something about this, will have the ability to do something about this is if they have a tremendous mandate from the American people. If it's evident that there is tremendous support for this. That's just the nature of the game. There has to be an unambiguous, broad swath of energy and willpower and focus from the people. Now, that doesn't mean every single person needs to be completely on board with what's happening. But there needs to be the appearance of it. This is why the meme magic is so powerful. Speaking of, I cannot believe the absolute relentless on-message discipline by the Trump-Vance ticket. It has been phenomenal all throughout the debate, in every single interview. The single most important issue, the immigration problem, is the thing they tie every last issue back to, circling back to it over and over and over and over again. Trump was tweeting this morning, responding to the events of yesterday. For the second time, there's an attempt on his life, And how does he respond? Immigration. Immigration is the most pressing issue and needs to be comprehensively addressed, let's say. So Oren says, remember when all the black pillars were buying the media line about Vance being some disastrous drag on the ticket? Huh, black pillars. Couldn't be me. If you were blackpilling about this, be aware of the fact that someone had their tendrils into your mind, making you think stuff that was obvious horseshit. Because this is phenomenal. Wit says Vance curb stomped Dana Bash. Yeah, here you go. Oilfield Rando says, I can't stop watching this. Dana Bash jerking her head around like a bird because her target didn't accept her narrative's premise. Vance rejects the premises, then he attacks the premises. Just beautiful. All right, speed it up just a wee bit, and let's rock and roll.
And to protect them. Kamala Harris opened the border, and now these people are suffering. That's what I'm focused on, Dana.
Senator, I have to go through several things that you just said. First of all, the Clark County Sheriff and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources reviewed 11 months of 911 calls. They only identified 2 instances of people alleging Haitians were taking geese out of parks. They found 0 evidence to substantiate those claims. Also, other evidence that you have talked about, even you've retweeted, alleged evidence, are unsourced social media videos from a different city, apparently no connection to Haitians. And this is from a conservative activist who offered a $5,000 reward for such things. And then going just backly to the schools and the hospitals and so forth being overwhelmed, nobody is disputing that the town of Springfield, Ohio.
Did she say going just backly?
Going just backly to the schools and the hospitals. And
she must have meant going, she's trying to say going back quickly, and she said going just backly.
And so forth being overwhelmed.
So she's already kind of rattled.
Nobody is disputing that the town of Springfield, Ohio needs help. But you're not just a bystander. You're the senator from Ohio. So instead of saying things that are wrong and actually causing the hospitals, the schools, the government buildings to be evacuated because of bomb threats, because of the cats and dogs thing, why not actually be constructive in helping to better integrate them into the community? Because there are a lot of employers there who say that the Haitian workers are helping fill jobs that they need desperately filled.
Dana, first of all, let me just respond to a couple things that you said. But I want to start with something you said, which I think is frankly disgusting and is more appropriate for a Democratic propagandist than it is for an American journalist. There is nothing that I have said that has led to threats against these hospitals. These hospitals, the bomb threats and so forth, it's disgusting. The violence is disgusting. We condemn it. We condemn all violence.
Senator, this happened after you and President Trump were on the debate stage, said that cats and dogs were being eaten.
You asked a question, Dana, and I'm going to go ahead and answer it. What we have said is that this town has suffered terribly under the policies of Kamala Harris. Now, you just accused me of inciting violence against the community when all that I've done is surface the complaints of my constituents, people who are suffering because of Kamala Harris's policies. Are we not allowed to talk about these problems because some psychopaths are threatening violence? We can condemn the violence on the one hand, but also talk about the terrible consequences of Kamala Harris's open border on the other hand. Now, let me just fact check a couple of other things that you said, Dana, because it's important. You said that all of these migrants are in the country legally. They're in the country through...
Look at our boy cooking. Absolutely cooking. Like Trump's House of Wings. Maybe that's where he learned it. He's cooking the chicken wings off of her.
What's called temporary protective status.
Right.
That is when Kamala Harris waved a magic amnesty wand, taking people and giving them legal status. That is not to say that they're here legally. That is a terrible indictment of her amnesty policies that have further opened the border and further caused terrible migration into this country.
You might not agree with the policy, and obviously you don't, which is totally fair and legitimate. There are policy disagreements all the time. But the fact is, it is the law because President Biden and Vice President Harris are. But I don't want to frankly go down this conversation about policy.
Dana,
it's interesting that she's completely out of control of the conversation here. Like she's even having to check herself. This is for like a news anchor. Like this is a bad spot to be in. We're having to be like you're responding sort of off the cuff, and then you're like, wait, no. Actually, I don't want to talk about that. Let's not go down that. I need to get back on track here. He's completely derailed her.
You made a point. You don't. I agree. You don't want to talk about policy.
No,
Dana,
what I want to talk about.
Instead of about the fact,
Senator,
that
it was
Harris,
your distraction.
Dana, granted amnesty.
You were the one who started talking about eating dogs and cats.
Level.
You were the one who brought this
my
up.
Constituents
The president
were the
said
ones
it to
who talked about
60
eating
million
dog and
people.
cats, and I talked about it because you were ignoring this community. My constituents talked about
Have
it.
you
And
been
it is
to
my
Springfield?
responsibility to surface their concerns when the American media
Have you been to
ignores it.
Springfield?
Dana, I've been to Springfield probably 100 times in my life.
How about
My
recently,
children
since
to
you've
get
heard
ice
this?
cream at Young's Jersey Dairy.
Have you heard recently since you've gotten these calls?
Have I been in the last 4 days?
No,
no,
I'm
I haven't
talking
been
about
in the last 4 days, but I've
since
talked
you've
to a lot
gotten
of
these
people in
calls from the
Springfield, Dana,
constituents.
and they're telling me this stuff is happening. Dana, would you like to ask me questions and then let me answer them, or would you like to debate me on these topics? I noticed that when you had Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, you gave them multiple choice answers to the questions that you asked, and you allowed them to answer the questions. I'm happy to be here to talk about policy, but if you're going to interrupt me every single time that I open my mouth, then why am I even doing this? So please, ask a question, and I'd ask you to be polite enough to let me answer it.
Yes, I am, and I think that if Kamala Harris and Tim Walz were making unsubstantiated claims that had racist undertones about people eating dogs and cats, I would, and they didn't answer the questions about that, then I would have similar interactions with them.
Oh my God. Just absolute. I got the image of the dragon from Game of Thrones going across the horizon, just completely nuked her. Had her stuttering, bumbling. You started like jerking her head around. And I get the sense that part of this response from her is that she genuinely believes what she's saying. Like when she says she thinks like, oh, this is a non-issue, like I think she genuinely believes that. She doesn't even have it in her mind or her heart to acknowledge that maybe his constituents are telling the truth. When she asks him, have you been to Springfield, Ohio? He's like, yeah, like 100 times. Oh, whoops, that question blew up. You don't. It's like a lawyer. If you're a news anchor, you don't want to ask a question that you don't know the answer to because you might get a line like that. Have you even been to Ohio? Yeah, 100. Have you even been to Springfield? Yeah, 100 times. And he name drops a specific restaurant there. And then she's just completely reeling. Once again, I will put out the call for those of you who want to issue your mea culpas. Well, you said that Vance was going to be a disaster. That he's too much of a goofball. He's weird. You let your minds get poisoned by the people you think are your enemies. Want to give a shout out here to $2 super chat from DC Woodworking. Thank you very much, sir. Very much appreciated. That's what I was going to say. Like when she's saying, like, have you been to Springfield? Have you gone there yourself and confirmed every one of these things? And he's like, no, my constituents are saying these things, and my job is to represent my constituents. This is brilliant framing on this. I'm surfacing the things that my constituents are saying. And she's like, well, have you even gone and confirmed them yourselves? You're just like believing your constituents. You like believe that your job is to like represent the things that they say and believe. The implication being, yeah, your constituents are a bunch of morons. And you shouldn't just be listening to them. Your job as a senator is not to represent them. This whole interview could not have gone worse for her. So continuing on this subject of our brilliant prince, Conan Esquire says, super important, JD Vance is the first politician I've ever heard directly address the fact that them being here legally is not good enough. Someone tweeted that Trump is our greatest poster, and then JD Vance is our greatest reply guy, and there's something cosmically beautiful about that. You have the poster and the reply guy. So here we've got a good post from Vance plus a great reply. He says, if you were to ask what caused me to change my tune about President Trump from 2016 to 2020, I could give you a few reasons. But what we're seeing in Springfield really drives it home. Housing costs skyrocketing, communicable diseases on the rise, car accidents, crime, and insurance premiums moving up, citizens complaining for months or longer and mostly ignored. But it's not just what's happening, it's the way our leadership responds to it. Confronted with many of their citizens begging for relief, our broken elites offer only scorn. It is racist, they tell us, to get angry at being unable to afford a home, or to complain about being unable to drive a car safely down the streets paved by your neighbors, or to call 911 because strangers are slaughtering geese in a public park. They've ignored this town's problems for years. Now they pay attention, not to focus their considerable wealth and power on helping their fellow citizens, but to use their platform as a weapon against those who dare to notice that their lives have gotten worse. They are here legally, they tell us. Yes, they're here legally because Kamala Harris granted temporary protective status to 100,000 Haitians. But Kamala Harris waving the magic amnesty wand is not a justification for the presence of 20,000 newcomers in Springfield. It's an indictment on her despicable open border. I don't know if I've ever seen a Republican politician call into question something that's on the immigration issue, call into question the mechanism by which they became legal. No, they're like the responsibility of Republican politicians has been advocating for the maintenance of the status quo. Now, we've got JD Vance leading the charge on repealing the status quo, moving back. Nothing justifies violence or the threat of violence levied against Springfield or its residents. We condemn both. But the existence of threats doesn't justify silencing those who wish to petition their leadership for a better life. There is no heckler's veto in our country. Donald Trump was shot in the head, and yet they still call him a threat to democracy. Yet it is Kamala Harris who is a threat to democracy. It's Kamala Harris who would rather import new voters than persuade the ones who are already here. It's Kamala Harris who would rather ignore the citizens of Springfield than undo the policies that hurt them. It is Kamala Harris who would rather censor her fellow Americans than listen to them. What we are seeing from Kamala Harris and her enablers in the media is disgusting. And there's only one person who has consistently stood up to Kamala Harris and the entire corrupt system she represents. There is only one person who has consistently fought for the people Kamala Harris laughs at or ignores. Donald J. Trump for president. Another thing that he does really well, really consistently, is constantly redirect the focus back to Trump. This is his responsibility. He's not here to pimp out himself, to preen about how great he is and all the great things he's going to do. No, he's here as he's the number two, and he's constantly pointing to the number one. I've also noticed in the different interviews that he's given, and Trump to an extent as well during the debate, that there was a point where prior to the DNC, they weren't directing all of their focus on Kamala. They talked a lot about Biden, and they really emphasized the fact that Biden is the people's pick, and they talked about Biden and Biden. Since then, it's univocal, directed right at Kamala, calling out Kamala constantly. And I think this is intentional, rhetorically, because the Kamala campaign wants to hide her as much as possible, but they're dragging her out into public, forcing her to come out and address all of this stuff, forcing her into the light, which is exactly where she doesn't want to be, both personally and her campaign. Make no mistake about it, Kamala wants nothing to do with all of this. She's hating every last second of it, and they're dragging her constantly into the light where she doesn't want to be, where she's just a gaffe machine. So one of the greatest coal posters recently has been Zaid Jilani. He replies, he says, Springfield was declining for years until they saw an increase in jobs and growth driven by people moving in. That means more wealth, healthier budgets, etc. Are there no upsides to immigration in your view? What about Usha's parents? Should they have stayed in India? So he's getting personal. And here's JD Vance replying. Now this is the vice president, the ostensible incoming vice president, replying directly to him. You could tell he wrote this to him with his own hands. He knows who he is. He says, dude, I've always liked you, so maybe this should be a longer conversation, but come on. Are there no upsides to immigration is a radically different question from should we drop 20,000 people from a radically different culture in a small Ohio town in a matter of a few years? First of all, remember that I've been on this issue for months, well before it became viral. You have actual leftists who will say, look, housing prices have gone up. It's great for the local residents. What about the people who don't own homes? What about the grandparents who do own homes but would like their kids to have a chance to buy a home? Look at the number of Medicaid recipients who are newcomers. Do you not think that stresses the local hospital system? I have constituents who say they've lost their jobs or been told they won't be getting a raise because new migrants are willing to work for cheap. There are homeless people who can't get homes. Look at the number of ESL students in a small school district, increasing over threefold to nearly 1,000 kids. Do you think it affects the quality of education for locals when their schools are flooded with a bunch of people who don't speak the language? I could go on and on. Again, a longer conversation, but I don't know why your automatic assumption is that the only reason people are complaining about this is because they have bad motivations. And I cannot stand the condescension directed at all those people who, on the record, are giving very specific testimonials about how their lives were made worse. This is our reply guy vice president. Just nuking the libs on Twitter. It's beautiful to see. 3 million views on this one. 40 million views on this one. The narrative discipline is so good. And notice he doesn't take the bait on the personal shot either. Speaking of narrative discipline, listen to this. You'll hear the black pillars who don't want you to go hear this stuff for yourself. They will talk about how, it's just rhetoric. They're, he was stapling green cards to diplomas and all this stuff. Listen to the rhetoric. This is not, like he says old Trump is back. This is way stronger than old Trump.
And illegal Haitians, and he came in, illegal Haitian migrants taking over a beautiful place. It was so beautiful. Springfield, Ohio. I was there. I campaigned there a while ago. Springfield, it was so beautiful. Now it's just, what a place. Can you imagine you have this small little community, all of a sudden you have 20,000 illegals in your community. Nobody knows where they come from. I'm angry about young American girls being raped and sodomized and murdered by savage criminal aliens.
I heard that and I was like, whoa, man, he's not holding back. This is perfect, Javier. He says, so when a law is passed to deport them all, that will be okay because it's legal, right? I want to hear that one from a Trump proxy. It'd be great if it was from Trump or JD themselves, but I want to hear that. All right. Little dark there for a minute. So let's laugh for a moment.
Here I am with Kamala, by the way, who I agreed to debate because I love to debate and I'm a very good debater. I love to debate.
That's debatable. Okay, very debatable.
What are my thoughts on immigration?
I think it's a perfectly fine question.
It's a very nasty
question. And we're going to be
question.
doing a lot because there are people over there and there are people over here, okay? And we want, okay?
Slow down, little Kamala. Don't hurt yourself. There's people, they want to come into the country, and there's some people they want to leave the country, and I think if they want to leave, they should leave, and if they want to come in, we should put them in jail.
That is actually so inappropriate, and that is exactly what I'm talking about.
They're coming from outer space and Oaxaca.
Okay, I'm speaking. All right,
The Democrats, they say the price is right, but it's very wrong. It's very wrong, and we're getting rid of prices, and we're giving away a lot. We're giving away vegetables. I'm starting a garden, a very big garden, and everyone can have a pumpkin.
Okay, you know what? We're not doing pumpkins, okay? In my policies, we're giving away tomatoes, okay, carrots, all right, cucumbers, all right, for everybody, not just one side, because there's the right and then there's the left. And then there's everybody in between.
You know, there's the right side, then there's the wrong side. And Kamala, she's in over her head. Look at her. Look at her, by the way.
The way he says Kamala, he's got it nailed. And Oaxaca, both of them, this is two of the best impressions that I've heard of either person. They capture both their actual, like, the sound of their voice, but then they get there's the left side and the right side, and then there's everybody in between, like complete meaningless stuff she says, and then the weird like subject changes where he'll like subject hop all of a sudden. Very well done. So the great Scott Adams has come around to what the great Matt Erickson was saying. Look at this. Look at this. We're leading the charge here, folks. He says, I'm revising my debate scoring. My first impression was a tie, which I called a Harris victory. But the only thing I recall about the debate today is they're eating the dogs. Visual, scary, viral, memorable, repeatable, and directionally correct in terms of unchecked immigration risk. It's the strongest play of the election. Trump won the debate. I got to stop underestimating his game. Trump had no base hits in the debate, but his long ball is still rising. Incredible. For my baseball guys out there, especially my sabermetrics guys, my Fangraphs guys, Trump is like I'm trying to think of like a specific player that he would correspond to, but he's like all home runs, nothing but extra base hits. Batting average might be kind of low, but slugging percentage is off the charts, which is like one of the most valuable hitters that you can have. Maybe Bryce Harper a little bit, yeah, especially later career Bryce Harper. But Trump is like the anti Joey Votto. Joey Votto, the on base percentage machine. Trump is just all slugging percentage. Doesn't take very many walks, like no walks at all. That's why he can't be Barry Bonds, because he doesn't walk all that often. But he's just cranking bombs left and right. All right. So here's the fact check of the century.
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. What? But let's understand.
So where the fuck are we right now?
I like how you got the light skin back here, who's like, man, don't ask me about her. Please, 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 don't ask me to weigh in here. Where the fuck are we? So the great Eric Prince has weighed in. He says, is she that dumb or just horrifically callous? As VP, she gets plenty of intel briefings about troops in Syria and Jordan. Both took casualties in the last 12 months. Plus losing 2 SEALs off Yemen, not to mention the multi-billion-dollar expenditure of missiles shooting down Iranian attack drones in the Red Sea. It's another clear sign that Washington elites really don't care about those that serve in our armed forces. Note, good job soldiers for calling bullshit on her. Someone pointed out that they're wondering if these guys are going to wind up subject to some sort of an investigation, and some sort of new policy will be introduced preventing them from weighing in on politics. If they do, man, if they decide to go down that road even further, there's a lot of different ways that things can go, but radicalizing the military against them is probably not the way to go. But I don't expect them to be intelligent enough or risk averse enough to recognize the futility of that approach. And Josh Ham says, hell yeah, it's fun when I see my messages go on here. Yes, Josh Ham is one of all of you guys out there. You guys you send me messages, very much appreciate it. Josh Ham has got you all beat. The dude fills my inbox with potential content. And a huge number of the clips that come through here are ones that he sent me. Sometimes I saw them already, but it's good when people send me stuff that I've already seen, because it shows me, I get some feedback on what you guys are interested in, what you want to see. So you can go to you can go to Twitter and follow me at Real Kingpill. Just send me DMs. I'm trying to get better at checking the ones even from people I'm not following that wind up in the other folder. Doing my best to keep up with all of you guys, and it's very much appreciated. This is a show for the people. Taylor, do you need... you can DM me, or you can tag me in the Discord, works as well. I've pulled a bunch from you there as well. Anthony Cumia, more and more lies from this one, incapable of honesty. Now, if you listen to the much-hyped Stormy Waters Jason interview last week, then you remember Stormy talking about Goldman Sachs and why Goldman Sachs, like JP Morgan Chase, it's not quite what you think. he pointed out that Jamie Dimon and David Solomon are unique as CEOs of these major financial institutions because they're also the chairman. Their entire life, they didn't get appointed CEO; they worked up to CEO. So they're unique in that these brands, these businesses that are based in the United States, that depend upon a healthy, prosperous United States for the sake of their own future, their own personal legacies are entirely wrapped up in them. And these guys, like, money doesn't matter to them. Legacy is everything. They got more money than God. They could not care less about money. But they care about legacy. They care about the name that they have and its association with that brand and how that's going to be remembered, especially as they get older. So Kamala said during the debate that Goldman Sachs gave her economic plan their approval. Here's a quote from her.
Goldman Sachs says my plan would grow our economy and his plan would shrink it.
Now, first of all, imagine being the DNC candidate for president and you're shouting out Goldman Sachs supporting you. Like, imagine getting to the point where you have to do that. This indicates the sort of straws that they're grasping at. They're having to spit in their base's face. They're ostensible. They're within the frame of the election and thinking about the actual voters versus their actual base. Here, they're shouting out what they see as their actual base, the financial elite, versus the actual people. There's not a single person in the audience that goes, "Oh, Goldman Sachs, wow. Man, you got Goldman Sachs' backing? Oh, man, I really got to vote for you now." So here's David Solomon's reaction to it.
Let's talk some politics. Debate was last night. Not sure if you had a chance to see it or not. Your own economic team, of course, has made news of late, suggesting that the bigger boost to growth would come from the Harris economic plan, at least over the first couple of years. She mentioned it last night. You feel the same?
So that report, which was mentioned last night in the debate, came from an independent analyst. And it's interesting, Scott. I think a lot more has been made of this.
An independent analyst. They're immediately like, yeah, that's not one of our guys.
Than should be. What the report did is it looked at a handful of policy issues that have been put out by both sides, and it tried to model their impact on GDP growth. And the reason I say a bigger deal's been made of it is what it showed is the difference between the sets of policies that they put forward was about 0.2%. Okay, so economy grows. Okay, if you took these particular sets of policies they looked at, and by the way, we have no idea whether these policies, these things that are talked about, will ultimately be implemented. What was the growth impact? And the differential was 0.2%. So, I think our clients are trying to look at what's going on from a policy perspective and make judgments. I think this blew up into something that's bigger than what it was intended to be.
If you can read between the lines there, he sounds pissed. This is about as strong of a smackdown as you can get. And he could have very easily said, given kind of a mealy-mouthed, wishy-washy non-answer to this question. But this is the response of a man who does not want to be associated with this woman. Does not want his brand associated with this woman. And being willing to go out, like, I don't know how to convey just how significant it is that people like this are coming out and making these sorts of statements within the circles that they run in. Within the Capitol Hill, New York to Los Angeles, financial elite. Within those circles, this is about as close as you're going to get to an open endorsement of Trump. These guys are wise to, as much as they can, just stay out of it altogether. Because they don't need to. They don't need to endorse him. I'm not sitting here hanging on, waiting for him to get their endorsement. It's never coming. But this is a pretty strong repudiation of her and her campaign. They want nothing to do with it. And he sounds frankly kind of pissed. If you look at his body language, here when he's nodding at him.
Oh, that report, which was mentioned last night in the debate, came from an independent analyst. And it's interesting, Scott. I think a lot more has been made of this.
Right there. He's that nod, that really intense look at him. This is body language saying, I'm understating what I actually think here, and you get the point. Yeah, I think a lot more of this has been made than should have. So I'm giving you a quote that if you just read it in a journal article or a newspaper article or whatever, then you'd just be like, okay, yeah, and a lot more has been made out of this. But I'm telling you, there's weight behind these words. A lot more has been made out of this than should have been. Which means she needs to keep my fucking name out of her mouth.
Than should be. What the report did.
His eyes narrow. You see his eyes get a little wider and then they narrow again.
Has been made of this than should be.
Raises his eyebrows.
What the report did.
And then he narrows it again when he's talking about the report. All right, there's your body language evaluation for the day. So we've finally met Tim Walz' wife. For whatever reason, they thought, you know what will make Tim Walz, that'll help us with all of the Tim Walz scandals? And I've heard some rumors of some dark stuff that I would expect is probably being held onto for an October surprise. But I've heard some dark, dark things. I guess they're trying to get out ahead of that by bringing Gwen out here. And oh my God. Shout out to Ben Braddock here. Graduated Ben on Twitter. He says, Gwen Walz radiates evil. You can see it in her eyes. Oh my God. I don't want my mind to go the places that it's going. Just looking at, I mean, obviously she's much taller than he is. Oh, sorry, I forgot to freaking share the screen here. Fortunately, it's short.
Bye-bye, Donald Trump. We are turning the page. 52 days and we are turning the page. 52 days and it is bye-bye, Donald Trump. Bye-bye, Donald Trump.
Look at that expression. Oh. Right here. Oh my God. How do they find these women? I'm pretty sure she works in education. If I'm not, let me double check that real quick. Gwen Walz, American educator and public school administrator. Oh my God. The poor children who have been subjected to this woman. Can you imagine the cruelty that flows through her veins? My wife says that lady makes coats out of puppy skins. Yeah. Rounding out the nightmare blunt rotation. Javier, no. Trump War Room. This is just cranking out the bangers. This case study in Trump derangement syndrome. This woman is psychotic. Speaking of psychotic, Yuval Noah Harari, the, what would you call him, like the soothsayer of the regime, the Grima Wormtongue of the World Economic Forum. They absolutely, shout out to Emergent Perspective on Twitter, a powerful mutual. At _emergent_, go follow him. He says, they absolutely understand what Trump being in office again means. They're terrified. Yuval Noah Harari of the WEF on Trump's re-election.
Global order.
Are you concerned that Trump might be elected again? Shortly?
I think it's very likely. And if it happens, it is likely to be the kind of like the death blow to what remains of the global order. And he says it openly. Now, again, it should be clear that many of these politicians, they present a false dichotomy, a false binary vision of the world, as if you have to choose between patriotism and globalism, between being loyal to your nation and being loyal to some kind of, I don't know, global government or whatever.
Isn't that interesting? You have to choose between being loyal to your nation. I mean, like, first of all, he's describing this as a false dichotomy, and the irony is just rich here. But and then he says, or some sort of, I don't know, like a global government or whatever. Isn't that fascinating? Like, he's describing the opinion he is very obviously opposed to, and then he's describing the opinion that he's very obviously endorsing, but he doesn't describe it specifically. It's just some sort of global government or whatever.
And being loyal to some kind of, I don't know, global government or whatever.
Can you imagine being loyal to your nation and being loyal to some kind of global government? Dual loyalty, you might call that. Interesting. This guy's advocating some sort of dual loyalty. Interesting. Let me pull up Wikipedia and do an early life check real quick. I'm not actually going to do that. I don't need to do that. Another one of these unhumans, Thierry Breton. Now, you remember this guy. This is the guy from the EU who sent the letter, the sternly worded letter to Elon Musk before he was going to have the conversation with Donald Trump and threatening him. Well, and then I just forgot her name. The Ursula von der Leyen from the EU. She was like, yeah, no, he didn't get the okay to do that. Well, look at this. Today, Thierry Breton, the primary opponent of technological progress in the European Union, resigned. He was responsible for making technology companies Europe's number one enemy, making many companies leave for the US. The EU AI Act, which made it impossible to build an AI startup in Europe. The Digital Services Act, which was used to stifle free speech in Europe, famously on here. From his resignation letter, it looks like he was fired. I think what that shows is that all the attention everyone's bringing on here on how Europe was going the wrong way is working. So please keep posting on here and telling your friends about the problems of Europe and where you feel Europe should be going instead. Because the EU does actually listen to us to steer its future, not immediately, but eventually. I'm not quite so optimistic, but I do think that I was thinking about this the other day, that if Twitter, we keep coming back to this, if Twitter was not purchased by Elon and was not what it is today, then there's so many things downstream of that would be so much worse. This guy would still have a job. Because I do think that the outcry that happened on Twitter because of the interview that was happening on Twitter, which is what sparked the letter in the first place, that's the thing that took him down. Now, I'm under no illusions. I'm sure he's headed for a cushy consultancy gig somewhere where he's still going to be making an impact. But at least he's been kicked out on his ass for now. I'm not going to read his whole letter. Who cares? Screw this guy. So I've said for a while now that we are, I suspect, either before the election, optimistically it would be before the election, it may be after the election, but we're going to start seeing surprising Democrats abandoning the ship and moving to a neutral, moderately pro-Trump position, accepting his authority, recognizing him as the choice of the people will probably be the way that it'll be communicated. I don't know who. I've got maybe some speculation or some guesses, but one way you could think about it might be like moving in the Joe Manchin direction. I think we're going to see this happening. We're going to see people that, because of the RFK Tulsi move, this is going to clear the runway for more moves like that from people who aren't already seen as Democrat outsiders, but actually Democrat insiders who are going to abandon ship. Now, CNN may be leading the charge on something like this because their commentary has gotten notably more both Trump, I don't know if I'd say Trump sympathetic, but at least Trump neutral, and much more critical of Kamala. For example, here's this segment. Senior data reporter Harry Enton just showed an aggregate that has her running 13 points behind where Biden was in 2020 with young voters. So this clip doubles as evidence of CNN continuing this drumbeat, indicating that there are people within the ostensible Democrat coalition who are bailing on the Kamala ticket. And it's also commentary on young voters and their state.
Up by just 7 points. Look, Kamala Harris is doing somewhat better than that at this point, up by 15 over Donald Trump, but still
what a voice. Kamala Harris.
Really lagging where Joe Biden was back in 2020. So Kamala Harris would love extra support from young voters. Maybe Taylor Swift can deliver a few of those. Beyond that, we were talking registration. Look at the key battleground states of Pennsylvania and North Carolina. Look, the Democratic edge over GOP voters at this point in the process. In September of 2020, look at this. In Pennsylvania, Democrats had a 559,000 voter edge. Look where it's dropped now to. They're still ahead, but it's just 169,000. You see the same trend in North Carolina where you see that drop from 415,000 to now an edge of just 128,000. Democrats still ahead, but Republicans have made massive gains in registration over the past 4 years, up by just 7 points. Look.
The drumbeat continues. All right, this is the third or fourth time that someone said something about Alan Lichtman in the chat here. So let me see. Is this the guy that has the... Oh, this fucking guy. Okay, I'm going to have to do a segment on this dude here. I'll prepare for that in the future. I think this dude's full of shit. Shout out to Slosher, $5 Canadian. Getting some Canadian bucks. He says, Matt, are you saying I can tell just by doing an early life check? Pete Q. No, I'm saying eventually you won't have to. Banger. Thank you for the super chat, sir. No, you're good, Bryce. You're good. I was when I first saw this guy, I remember him coming out in 2020 and predicting the Biden election, and then he was proven right, and so I was like, maybe I need to take this guy a little more seriously. But then I saw his methodology, particularly when Keith Woods broke down his methodology. Keith was like endorsing it, and I just... Yes, there's a lot of attack surface here. I will plan an entire segment going into why I think the guy's full of shit. Not necessarily that, not comprehensive proof that he's wrong, but why I think that his methodology makes for very good headlines. He's a very good headline generator. I do want to say what's funny here. So Slosher with the $5 Canadian super chat. Over the weekend, I finally got the chance to listen or to watch the movie Civil War. And my God, what a terrible movie. It was so bad. I mean, it had its entertaining parts. And I suppose if I was to detach from it personally and take for granted the message that it's trying to send, did it send that message effectively? Yeah, probably. But it was so cringy. So bad. Have any of you guys seen it? What were your thoughts? The funny thing that reminded me about this was when she stops to get gas, and you've got the Hicklibs there protecting the gas station, and they're bartering, and she's like, $300 for a half a tank of gas. And he goes, $300 will get you a sandwich. We've got ham and cheese. And then she goes, $300 Canadian. And he's like, oh, okay, go ahead. At that point, I was sort of like, okay, maybe it's kind of starting off kind of lame, but maybe we'll sink into something good here. No, man, it just... Who possibly comes up with a world in which the United States is at war with itself and the Canadian dollar is the thing that everyone wants? Oh, the Canadian dollar. Wow. How freaking economically illiterate do you have to be? This is on top of the worst plot hole in all of it was the fact that They say the interstates are destroyed. The interstates are like untravelable. They show them driving along, and there's this bombed out. It looks like Walking Dead, like bombed out cars and stuff on the side of the interstate. And yet there's people who are in New York hanging out, partying, powers on. Like, these people are so fanciful. If the interstates have been made rendered untravelable, there's not going to be like gas at a gas station that you could just go stop in and get some. Maybe it's really expensive, but if the ability to transport goods and services in the United States was down for like a week, there would be no like mobilizing armies and stuff. It would be absolute cannibalistic chaos. The whole thing is just a gigantic fever dream. Just a total lib LARP. It was absolutely terrible. I was disappointed because I wanted to see a good movie. I wanted to see an interesting take on this. And I'd heard from some people that it was actually better than expected. So I went in with like moderately elevated expectations and was just horrifically disappointed. All right, just catching up on some of the comments here. Tricky Woo says, the long 5 seconds I had to hear Camel Toe Harris spew nonsense to get to this stream was almost too much. Apologies. Yeah, the idea, Drunk Plato says, the idea that the Canadian dollar would hold after the collapse of the US dollar is so laughable. Written by someone who doesn't know how money works. Yes, right. All right, I've seen a few comments indicating some interest in a Seattle meetup. So we may have to plan one of those. I'll have to talk with my wife and figure out a time we can make that happen. But I believe we will make that happen. All right, got another clip here. CNN, same guy, describing. We've talked before about the all these polls. So you get the polls are like overwhelmingly jiggered to be pro-Democrat. And they come out to it's like +1 or +2 for Kamala, and then all the libs go out and say, see, she's winning. Well, here's them, the libs themselves, describing why +1 or +2 for Kamala is a very, very bad thing.
This is about the Electoral College, right? So let's take a look at the average margin. Nationally, Harris is ahead in the average poll by 2.5 points. But look in those 7 key battleground states: Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Harris is only ahead by 0.3 points, John. So the bottom line is, in those 7 key battleground states, it's a significantly tighter race than it is nationally, John.
So Al Gore and Hillary Clinton are calling right now, Harry, asking what the chances are that Harris could win the popular vote but lose in the Electoral College.
Okay, so basically, you note that 2.5-point lead nationally here, right? Okay, Harris's chances, if she wins the popular vote by 2 to 3 points, the chance she wins the Electoral College is only 53%. The bottom line is, once you have to get all the way north to about 3 to 4 points for Harris to have a clear chance, the clear majority chance of winning the Electoral College. If she only wins by less than 2, look at that. Only a 23% chance of winning. Right now, Harris is right now in that danger zone where basically about half the time, given that popular vote margin nationally, she would win. And so here's the situation. Chance Harris wins the popular vote at this point is about 70%, but the chance she wins the Electoral College is only about 50%. So the bottom line is, at this hour, John, there's about a 20% chance that Kamala Harris wins the popular vote, but actually loses in the Electoral College. So we could be heading towards one of these splits that we saw in 2016 and in 2000, whereby one candidate, Kamala Harris, wins in the popular vote, but loses in the Electoral College. Basically, at this hour, we're right in that sort of weird middle zone where we honestly don't know what's going to happen based upon the popular vote. And that is why those national polls that show Kamala Harris ahead, at this point, really don't matter that much.
Harry Etten, thank you so much wherever you are. Stay safe, my friend.
Yeah, as Bryce says, the funny thing is these CNN polls are 100% inflated. So they're I bring this to you guys' attention to show that there is no the slob Kamala Harris's knob campaign is does not have full penetration throughout the lib media. Isaac, or is it Itzhak? $5 US. There we go. There we go. Some good, hard American currency. He says, I watched Jurassic World Dominion this weekend. My God, such a shit movie. Bad on almost every front. I appreciate the heads up. Thank you for the money, and I appreciate the heads up because that one was on my list. I don't do much movie watching. Just don't have the time, don't have the bandwidth, really. This one I wanted to watch because I thought there might be some interesting commentary to come out of it, and there basically wasn't. But thank you for saving me the time because that's one that I may have decided to throw on thinking, hey, at least I'll get to see some freaking like dinosaurs chewing on people or something. Okay, interesting little news tidbit here. Pennsylvania Supreme Court has ruled that undated and misdated mail-in ballots cannot be counted. I do think that Pennsylvania is very much up for grabs, in part because of Josh Shapiro's own aspirations for 2028. And I don't know if he got snubbed for VP or if he turned it down. In either case, it's not looking good for Kamala if she doesn't have Josh Shapiro's support. If she hasn't brought him in as a full and dedicated member of the coalition. He may have designs of his own on 2028, which may make him not all that inclined to participate in fortification efforts. But this is yet another in a long sequence of drum beats. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean, of course, that the fortification is being blocked. It means that there's significant efforts to block the fortification, but the nature of the fortification is that it can morph and shift and pivot and move as necessary. And they don't need that much fortification for some of these hotly contested states like Pennsylvania. But I think in a quote unquote normal election, maybe 2012 or earlier, it would be basically seen as a foregone conclusion that Pennsylvania isn't really up for grabs anymore. I think that's where we're at right now. I've had this thread here in the hopper for a little bit, and this is a good spot to drop it in here. Shout out to Lucas, Schizo Freak on Twitter. He's a cranker out of bangers, and this is a really good one. He got the Elon stamp of approval on this thread. He said the institutional stance on election fraud says the U.S. has the highest stakes election in the world, is basically the only democratic country in the world that doesn't make you show an ID to vote, and miraculously has zero voter fraud. That sounds totally retarded, man. It's extremely reasonable for someone to learn all that and just go, wow, my guy probably lost because they rigged it then. With nothing to suggest fraud whatsoever, the default position one should have on a high-stakes election that fails to meet global baseline security standards is it's probably rigged. Even if it's somehow true and there's miraculously zero fraud, it's such an optics disaster that it should be changed just to prevent U.S. elections from looking like a joke. You cannot LARP as the leader of the free world while failing to meet the election security standards of the third world. The fact that anyone gets away with defending the lack of U.S. voter ID laws is insane. They only got away with it because half the country pretends to think their argument makes sense because they know the fraud helps their guy, and they got that half to call the other half racist if they disagree, which is also insane. This is like marrying a girl from Tinder without meeting up first to make sure she looks cute. The government is catfishing you. This is a scam. And this was piggybacking off his other banger. We have zero voter fraud, and if you made any attempts to lower that number, which you don't have to because it's zero, then it would stop everyone who's black from voting somehow. What did he say here? Jeremy Kaufman. I read this on PolitiFact, and he says, I asked my black friend, only one I have, don't usually get along with him, and he said it's true, but he doesn't want to talk about it because it reminds him of crime stats and his IQ. He goes on to say, I don't even care about politics outside making tweets now and then, but I think about this every time I have to show an ID, and I'm just like, what the fuck, man? Insane, cartoonish scam. If I'd known how gullible you guys are, I would have become a crypto scammer 20 years sooner. The research says there's no election fraud, Lucas. Any group coordinated enough to pull this off was smart enough to read your Reuters write-up on the methods used to detect election fraud and make sure their scam doesn't trigger any, man. Come on. You can't prove the absence of a thing, especially when you have less info than the people doing the thing in the first place. Also, for what it's worth, there totally has been research claiming there was fraud, but it's always debunked immediately by facts and logic, and maybe a little confiscation of their domain name, which probably sends a pretty strong message that the rest should get in line. Whoa, man, that's like a conspiracy. Yeah, the government would never harass institutions who claim they came into power illegitimately. That would be against free speech, man. They coordinated national meetups where they protested by burning down the city and exploding cop cars, but they simply respect our democracy too much to interfere. The professors who taught their students the fire protesting stuff did studies proving this is totally good faith. It should be a states' rights issue. We should let all the states use different security standards in national elections. Also, we should let them issue birth certificates and tell us how many citizens they have to determine their impact in these elections. There's no way states could fraudulently maintain the existence of a person who doesn't exist, dude. Ghost Americans. That would require control of like state utility and housing records and some other shit kept on government databases that nobody except the state can check. Anyway, you guys get it. All systems can be cheated. If you genuinely think the people maintaining a system can't cheat it without setting off the cheater alarms, they also maintain you are too pure for what this world is going to do to you. I'm sorry and good luck. Community notes. Nobody has ever committed a fraud in America. Only Russia. Science 2024. Harvard, Yale, MIT, Reuters, Obama. ID laws prevent some people from voting, but so does elections seeming rigged. They know that and don't care because they don't want you voting. The line about blacks and IDs is bullshit, not because it's untrue, but because it pretends to care about everyone's vote when it doesn't want yours. Banger thread. Shout out to Lucas. He is a good follow. You should go follow him. Oh, yes, Phantom Americans. That's right. We had a debate about whether it should be Ghost Americans or Phantom Americans. But yeah, that's right. It was Phantom Americans. Thank you, Screwed Up Rebellion. We had a little conversation in the King Pilled voice chat after the Schizo stream on Friday, early Saturday morning, about this clip here. So Roger Stone says, back at it again. Joe Biden knows the message this is sending to the country. So, of course, you guys saw the clip that everyone saw of him putting on the Trump hat. And then there's this video that's been going around of him walking up the stairs of Air Force One holding a red hat. Now, this is a different hat, if you notice. So this is obviously being presented as happening after that. I haven't seen any details here. I don't know if this was actually the afternoon or the day after the whole event with him putting the Trump hat on. This is obviously a different hat. You can't tell if it's a MAGA hat, but it doesn't matter. He's walking up the stairs carrying a red hat. Now, even if this was an older clip, say this clip was a year old, 2 years old, and it's him walking up the stairs carrying a red hat. It doesn't matter because someone went and unearthed this and leaked this out. If that's the case, if we're assuming that this is an old clip that's being brought out and presented here, and in that case, I can't imagine that some just some a Trump guy on Twitter or something like that was like, oh hey, I remember this time way back when Joe Biden was carrying a red hat up the stairs. Someone who knew about this, who knew that there was a situation where he was carrying a red hat. Again, speaking of this alternate reality where this wasn't a video that just dropped right after the putting on the Trump hat event. They went and they pulled it out and they leaked it knowing full well the message that it sends. Regardless of when it happened, regardless of whether or not it's actually a Trump hat, the fact that it was dropped right after he put a Trump hat on intentionally, knowing full well what he was doing, because I do believe he knew full well what he was doing. He said just before he put it on, he's like, I'm not doing that. Like, I can't do that. And then he's like, fuck it, and put it on. Right after that, and Trump saying at the debate that he hates her, and it's very plausible that he would hate her. There's a video going around of him walking up Air Force One carrying a Trump hat. Imagine if we got a Joe Biden Trump endorsement in October. Imagine if that was the October surprise. Someone goes up to him at the beach, just filming, walks up to him. Hey, Joe, what do you say? And he's like, I hate that bitch. Vote for Trump. You AI video guys out there. There you go. There's some more content. All right, let's talk a little bit about Starlink here. FCC commissioner, the government is wasting millions rather than working with Starlink. This is from Brendan Carr, FCC, the commissioner of the FCC, senior Republican on the 5-member commission, previously general counsel of the FCC. Is that quote from in here? No, it's not. Okay, so he says, in 2020, the FCC secured a commitment from Starlink to offer high-speed internet to 640,000 rural locations for $1,300 per location in federal support. 640,000 rural locations for $1,300 per location. After revoking that award in 2023, the government is now spending in the ballpark and upwards of $100,000 per location in cases. $1,300 per location to $100,000 or more in some cases. This is just money laundering, and this is regime apparatchiks intentionally inflicting punishment on the American people. Because this money ultimately comes out of the pockets of Americans. Another operator, Texas-based Big Bend Telephone Company, won a $24 million grant to deploy fiber to just over 100 locations. While this would imply a cost of nearly $231,000 per passing, Big Bend said in a press release the project will actually cover around 312 locations, which would lower the per location cost to just under $77,000. Remember, Starlink was at $1,300. The ENMR Telephone Cooperative is receiving a $2.6 million grant to deploy a fiber-to-the-premises network to provide high-speed internet access to people in Tabaca, Guadalupe, Harding, Quay, San Miguel, Socorro, and Union counties. ENMR will make high-speed internet affordable by participating in the FCC's Lifeline and affordable connectivity programs. The project will serve socially vulnerable communities and blah, blah, blah. So this was for 5.4 square miles in New Mexico. Funded service area households, 11. Award amount, $2.6 million. Elon says true. This is another data point in the radicalization of anybody who's affiliated with the Elon network. And the people who could benefit from this. I have friends, I have family who are using Starlink now, who were formerly on like satellite internet or just like really shitty dial-up. And it's insane how easy it is to set up, how quickly you can get it set up, and how amazing it works. There is no reason that the entire globe shouldn't be completely covered already for a fraction of the money that's been spent. This is why we need the Department of Government Efficiency, the Doge. $5 US from See You in the Camp. Thank you, friend. He says, when you go through Lichtman's 6 keys, you'll notice the absurd assumptions he makes about the actual world we live in. Yes. That's a big part of it. I'll see if I can fit that one into tomorrow's show. I'll pull up the thing and we'll go point by point through it. And I'll break down why it's hard to believe that it's good faith at this point for him. There's so much value in being able to say, he's predicted correctly all these elections, and he says this. That's a powerful headline that I'm sure people would be more than willing to pay handsomely for. How much is Starlink? Anybody out here who has Starlink? Josh Ham wants to know. I don't know personally. But I know that my parents in particular used to be on satellite internet, and it probably took like 15 years off the end of my dad's life. Since he switched to Starlink, it's been amazing. Here's another interesting Elon-related note from X Engineering. We're rolling out a new block option only for DMs. It prevents an account from sending you messages while enabling you to continue to interact with the account in other ways. This is another step toward our evolution of messaging on X. Stay tuned. And Elon says, in general, we are decoupling public posting from private messaging, so you can use X for private messaging only if you want. So now, remember when Elon took over Twitter, and all the people were like, "Oh, sorry, we're leaving. You know, it's going down the tanks. He's never going to be able to make this company run. He's losing all this money. He fired everyone. They're completely overwhelmed. They have no idea what they're doing." They announced a couple of weeks ago XTV with apps on all the major smartphone or all the major smart TV platforms. And XTV is very obviously a direct competitor to YouTube and will probably be even better. This is how, incidentally, this is how the boomers really get radicalized. If you have boomer parents who have a smart TV, go download the XTV app and subscribe them to, I don't know, Tucker Carlson, Pete Quinones, King Pilled, Thomas 777. Go subscribe them to your favorite people. Because now they could just open up their TV app and start listening to our guys. And I believe, I was talking about this several months ago. I believe, hold on just a second, it's telling me YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. As such, viewers will experience buffering. Very ironic. Right after I talk about, hopefully I'm still up. Let me know if you guys can hear me. Right after I talk about Starlink, and now that I'm talking about XTV competing with YouTube, all of a sudden I'm not getting enough. They're not getting enough video to maintain smooth streaming. XTV is going to be a competitor with YouTube and is going to be the final death knell in cable internet or cable news. No buffering currently going on. Cut in and out for a few seconds, but it's back. Okay, good to know. Thank you, guys. Because with Twitter, with X right now, you can go on and you could do a space, and you can in theory do a space for 24 hours. You could stream to the platform for 24 hours. You could stream round the clock. You could set up a network, a media network. Theoretically, someone could possibly do this. Set up a media network that streams, has all kinds of different talent, that streams on X round the clock. And someone can go pull up XTV and they can watch their favorite commentators streaming on X, and they don't even need cable news anymore. I think people don't fully appreciate just how significant XTV is going to be. And now X is even going into competition with Signal and Telegram and iMessages and Instagram and Facebook Messenger. They're introducing their own private messaging capability. It truly is on its way to becoming the everything app. Underestimate Elon Musk to your own detriment. I'm very excited to see the trajectory for this. Yeah, Oren McIntyre is our boomer whisperer. It's been buffering for me, nothing egregious. Okay, good to know. And there was some prices here. Someone mentioned prices for Starlink. Ryan Isaac says standard is about $100 a month. Starlink. Andrew says Starlink at $120 a month. Bryce says $299 for the units, but like $120 a month for the residential unit. Josiah says priced it out a month ago. $200 to $350 startup costs, around $100 a month. So pretty consistent. Andrew says, from Politically Catholic, says Stephen Miller is playing this very well. Keep Trump talking about immigration and force Kamala to keep talking about why her supporters keep trying to kill her opponent. Yes, absolutely. Don't just discipline Trump's messaging, discipline Kamala's too. Okay. Got a few more clips here. I'm going to nail this right about 2 hours today. A little under. So they finally dropped the Peter Thiel on All In podcast episode, and honestly, there wasn't a ton from it. He was dancing, he was shucking and jiving pretty good, and really avoiding digging in on anything in particular, which I thought was interesting in itself. And then he also reiterated a lot of the stuff that he said before. But there was one little segment in particular here I wanted to share with you guys. This is shout out to Autism Capital for clipping this out for guys like me.
Be a razor thin close election.
I guess he didn't. It was Uzi Obi and Autism Capital shared it. So shout out to Autism Capital for sharing this for guys like me who don't follow people named Uzi Obi.
Then I'm pretty sure Kamala will win because they will cheat, they will fortify it, they will steal the ballots, and so you know if we can answer them.
I can't get enough of David Sachs just chuckling over here. You constantly hear his chuckle in the back of your in the background.
They will cheat. They will fortify it. They will steal the ballots, and so you know if we can answer them in the event that it's close, I don't want to be involved. In the event that it's not close, I don't need to be involved. And so that's sort of a straightforward analysis right there.
Great jumping off point. How much cheating on a percentage basis do you think happens every year? How much, and do you think Trump actually won the last time?
You need to be careful with the verbs. So, you know, cheating, stealing, that implies something happened in the dark of night.
Massaging.
I think the verb you're allowed to use is fortify.
Okay, yeah, we don't want to get canceled on YouTube.
Ballot harvesting. I mean, it was, you know, it's all sort of, there were all these rule changes. It was sort of done in plain daylight. And, but yeah, I think our elections are they're not perfectly clean. Otherwise, we could examine it. We could have vigorous debate about it.
Well, what would you change then? What should change? Because we all want everybody's votes to count. We want it to be clean. I'm talking about the audience.
I don't know. At a minimum, you'd run them. You try to run elections the same way you do it in every other Western democracy. You have one-day voting. You have practically no absentee ballots. You have and it's, you know, it's 1 day where everything happens. It's not this 2-month elongated process. That's the way you do it in every other country. You'd have some somewhat stronger voter ID, and you know, make sure that, you know, the people who are voting have a right to vote.
Make it a national holiday.
That's basically what you do in every other Western democracy, and it used to be much more like that in the U.S. I mean, it's meaningfully decayed over the last 20, 30 years.
You know, I saw people talking about, you know, several months ago, they were talking about, you know, the necessity of getting to single-day voting, make it a national holiday has been Vivek's thing, paper ballots, all that. I've been kind of like, yeah, that would be great. It should be nice. But I keep hearing this from more and more people saying this same thing, hitting all the same points over and over and over again, to where now I think there might actually be some possibility of something like that. Obviously, there's going to be a huge campaign against it, and it's going to be difficult to make it happen. But I don't think it's completely out of the question. I did think it's an interesting point that he said his justification, this is a very Peter Thiel thing to say, his justification for not getting involved in financially in it. He said it wasn't included in the clip here, but he said earlier that he is like strongly pro-Trump and pro-JD and definitely wants them to win. He said it explicitly. And said anti-Kamala as well, I think. But he says, if it's going to be a blowout, they don't need me. If it's going to be close, I don't want to be involved because I know exactly what's going to happen if it's close. I know exactly who they're going to come after, and I don't want to give them any more attack surface to come after me than they need to. He also said that he did say, I think again it wasn't included in this, that he thinks that it's going to be a large victory for Trump. But that if it's close, that she'll win, which is an interesting framing on it. So he does believe, I've been on the record. I think it's going to be close. Like the reported numbers are going to be close and Trump is going to win. That's my expectation of it. I don't see the like Reagan style landslide. I don't see the huge landslide. I think that if it was an honest 1 day voting, paper ballots only, one person, one vote, I think if that was the case, it would be a massive landslide like that. But I'm so cynical about the state of the elections that I still think that it's going to be close. It would be interesting, probably not possible, but it would be interesting to go back the last like 4 or 5 presidential elections and be able to redo them or to remodel them based on single day elections, paper ballots, one person, one vote, all of that stuff. Because it's been ever since 2000, the libs love to point out that any Republican that has won has lost the popular vote. And I don't even think that's the case. I think that this is just how jiggered our elections have been for this long. I do think that if it was an honest election, that it would be a blowout. But I'm cynical enough about it that I don't think that we're going to get that blowout. But I don't think that it has to be a blowout on paper. Pardon the pun. I don't think it has to be a blowout on paper in order for Trump to wind up being the winner. I've been consistent on this, and I'm going to keep being consistent on this until I see something that tells me otherwise. I think it's going to be decided in the courts. And it's probably not going to be, I'm probably 50-50 on whether it's actually resolved by January 20th or not. So for future reference, I think I've said this before, but I'll reiterate it. Whenever I talk about the election, I'm not talking about November 5th. I'm talking about a period of time starting in November 5th and running until at least January 20th, if not a couple weeks after that. Thank you, Pleb Enforcement. Please like the stream, guys. I've got 2 more videos for you. Did a big, long segment on Megyn Kelly on the last episode. And then I went and finished her conversation with Sean Ryan. And then went and listened to Sean Ryan on her show. They got great chemistry. Very, very good conversations. Strongly recommend you go listen to him. She goes in to pretty big detail on the whole Me Too thing and her involvement at Fox and all of that, which was kind of interesting inside baseball, and then just describes her background. They talk about religion a little bit, the church, and my non-Protestant brethren out there, you'll have to sit through some kind of cringy takes on the on Christianity, but their hearts are in the right place. I could still appreciate them. Here was her on Tucker Carlson. I haven't listened to the whole episode yet, but I've seen this segment, and it is fantastic. Get your boomers listening to Megyn Kelly, folks. The boomers, Megyn Kelly is going to be a fantastic boomer whisperer, a la Oren, and she's probably what I would call like the classic Make America Healthy Again demographic. So she's not necessarily full MAGA. I mean, she's very pro-Trump, but she's very pro-RFK, and she represents that demographic very well, which I think is really signifies the new mainstream, like what's going to constitute the mainstream of American politics going forward for the foreseeable future. So get your boomers listening to Megyn Kelly. Your women too. She's fantastic entertainment for women.
The reason she's voting for Kamala Harris is because of Tim Walz's LGBTQ stance. Do you know what Tim Walz has done on the LGBTQ front? Let me tell you what's going to happen. Okay? Here's what's going to happen. A little girl sitting in Wisconsin who's maybe on the spectrum, maybe has acne, maybe is a little heavy set, maybe feels upset because her parents are getting divorced, something like that, is going to find herself down a rabbit hole on Reddit. And her parents aren't going to know because they're getting a divorce and they're not focused on her right now. And she's going to spend hour after hour on that thing, and Reddit's going to tell her she's actually a boy. And she's going to get sucked into this gender cult. And she's going to say, Mom and Dad, I want puberty blockers into cross-sex hormones, which will sterilize her and deprive her of all sexual pleasure for the rest of her life. And they're going to say, no, you're a girl. And she's going to say, but I want top surgery, this benign thing, this double mastectomy where I'll have tubes coming out of me and I'll never breastfeed a child. I want that too, because I'm a boy. And they're going to say no. And she's going to go to a judge in Minnesota, and because of Tim Walz, the court will take custody of her, use the Medicaid funds in Minnesota to provide her all of those things, chop off her breasts, sterilize her with the puberty blockers into the cross-sex hormones. And when this girl inevitably comes to the conclusion that she didn't want any of this, that it only added to her problems, which were the divorce and the acne and the puberty and not any trans issue, Who is she going to go to then? This is all because of Tim Walz. That's what Minnesota is doing right now to little girls and boys, taking custody away from the parents so that they can have these procedures without any loving parent there to help. And that's what Taylor Swift just endorsed for your children. So screw you, Taylor Swift.
Preach, Queen. Drunk Plato says, got my mom subscribed to Megyn Kelly's podcast last week, and she's already telling me about things she said recently. Huge W. That is a huge W. Our propagandists are the best, people. And the last clip for the day. Well, the last non-Hulk clip for the day. We got another fantastic ad from the RFK campaign. Who really are the MAGA people? Hey, Ian Carroll, I hate Taylor Swift. All my homies hate Taylor Swift. I've played a few of their clips of their campaign ads on here. This one I think is done. I think it's an AI voiceover. It's very well done, and gives you another little glimpse. Why can't I go back to the beginning of the clip? Hold on. Gives you another glimpse into the world of the pro-Trump libs, which is a very strange demographic. Again, we're seeing the Trump worldview being presented favorably to libs by libs.
Across the Atlantic in the North American country of the United States lies a fascinating and often misunderstood collective. From its northeastern cities to its midwestern towns to its expansive west, this courageous group of individuals are most notably known for their unwavering patriotism. Join us as we explore the fascinating world of the MAGA people. As we embarked on our journey, we were judicious in taking all necessary precautions. Our media had warned us that these were a vicious, radical, and even deplorable people. Contrary to what we had been told, we found the MAGA people to be warm, loving, and even rather cheeky at times. As we spent time with the MAGA people, we learned that their mantra, "Make America Great Again," is an optimistic belief that the United States will once again prosper by returning to its founding principles of a government by and for the people. Under these beliefs, the MAGA people strive to protect America's Constitution, freedom of its citizens, health of its people, and a yearning to restore the American dream that existed not so long ago. Notice their rather wholesome, familial demeanor. They often talk about their love of family, the importance of truth, and a desire for basic human rights. As they strive to uphold the peace and harmony throughout their communities, the MAGA people are insistent on protecting their borders. However, they are not inherently confrontational, as they advocate for ending the wars and military presence abroad. Further observations reveal that MAGA people come from all walks of life, including farmers and ranchers, family-owned businesses, entrepreneurs, health advocates, blue-collar workers, and military servicemen. And just recently, the MAGA people joined forces with another group, the MAHA people. Together, the MAGA and MAHA have started a movement to make America healthy again. As we departed back to our native land, we couldn't help but reflect on all that the MAGA people had taught us. Once perceived as a dangerous and barbaric group, we found ourselves feeling enlightened by the MAGA's moral, ethical, and honest ways of life. One could only hope that a similar movement would eventually emerge for us.
Such a good ad. It's fascinating to see the way that they're managing to straddle this line between maintaining their own independent coherence as their own little collective, the MAHA collective, while they're making explicit the fact that this is a coalition. These are different people. These are other people. These are not our people per se. We're differentiating, maintaining our own identity, and yet these are allies. The MAGA people are good people. They're allies to us. We're forming a coalition together who both believe in the beauty and the greatness and the wonder of this nation and want to protect that. Like there's kind of the overtones is here's the rural people. These are like the rural Americans, and we're the urban Americans, but we're still Americans. It's such good political rhetoric. And it enables them to be pro-Trump and yet still not have their identity entirely wrapped up in Trump and be able to, I'm looking at this like from their perspective, and still be able to post-Trump or separate from Trump, still maintain their own coherence as a political movement, an ideology, a collection of people with aligned interests. I think this is the new center. I think the RFK contingent is going to grow. Now they're going to need, RFK is not going to be around a whole lot longer. They're going to need a new figurehead, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's a number of different ways this could play out, but I wouldn't be surprised to see this become essentially the new Democrat Party, and that the candidate for the presidential ticket for the DNC comes out of this contingent of people. This is the optimistic view of the next 4 years, but I don't think that it's out of the question. Either way, I think this is going to represent the bulk of the American population is going to align with this sort of messaging, with these sorts of people. That makes me very positive and hopeful about the future. Anyways, that's all I got for you guys today. I'll be posting the master thread here as soon as I end the stream. Go to Twitter, follow me at RealKingPilled, and I'll drop all of the links that I went through here today. And then I'll be back here tomorrow for another episode of the #1 afternoon morning show on the internet, the ASTROLABE. Once again, you can follow me on Twitter at RealKingPilled. You can join the KingPilled Discord at kingpilled.com. And if you want to send a little bit of moolah over to yours truly, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/kingpilled. Very much appreciate all of you guys who've contributed so far. And I will see you guys tomorrow as I give you Hulk.
They're my hero. And they tried to kill the next president of the United States. Enough was enough. And I said, let Trumpomania run wild, brother. Let Trumpomania rule again. Let Trumpomania